The Philosopher's Library, Archives from a Hypertextual Mind. Folio 1, The Leaf That Shouldn't Exist. Prologue, A Knife in the Dark. The restaurant was designed to make people confess. Low light, high ceilings, a hush that made every clink of silverware sound like a verdict. The China kitchen at the Hyatt Regency took pride in discretion. Politicians, industrialists, the soft-spoken men who arrived with soft-spoken security. It was the kind of place where a private conversation could be purchased at the cost of a decent bottle of wine. David Lane never ordered wine in India. It wasn't virtue. It was self-defense. He'd learned decades ago that the subcontinent could take whatever you brought: sleep, certainty, appetite, your sense of invulnerability, and change it into something else without asking permission. Tonight, he wanted only noodles, a polite conversation about religious movements, and perhaps, if the evening went well, a few names, rumors made specific. He wanted data. He wanted a narrative he could test. Instead, he got hands on his arms. Two young men caught him in the threshold between the restaurant proper and a side foyer that smelled faintly of cleaning solution and expensive perfume. Their grip was businesslike, almost practiced, as though they'd done this before, as though abducting scholars in luxury hotels was a line item on a schedule. "Sir," one of them murmured, and the tone was wrong. Too intimate, too sure. Dave twisted automatically, a reflex from years of surfing where balance decided whether you ate water or rode it. "Let go." The second man didn't let go. He leaned close enough that Dave smelled tobacco and a sweet chemical mint. Something hard pressed into Dave's ribs. Not a gun, not yet, but sharp and decisive. A blade, angled in a way that promised it could slip between bones with minimal effort. "Quiet," the man said. "We are here to give you a warning." Dave's mind tried to make it ridiculous, because the human brain is always looking for the nearest exit from fear. This is a scam. This is a misunderstanding. This is India's version of a hotel hustle. Then the blade shifted, and his ribs lit up with a cold electric pressure that was not pain yet, but the clear outline of it. "Take down your article," the first man said. Dave blinked. "What article?" "Satya Sai Baba." The name fell between them like a stone. Dave felt absurdly the urge to laugh, not because it was funny, but because the brain, again, will do anything to avoid accepting a new reality. He hadn't written about Sai Baba in years. He'd archived his own obsession, filed it away like an old case. He'd assumed the world had moved on. Gurus died. Scandals shifted. Devotees found new screens to project onto. "You have 24 hours, the second man said, the blade still there, intimate as a lover. "Or else." "Or else what?" Dave managed. The first man's expression didn't change. He didn't smile. He didn't scowl. He looked like someone who'd been told this was a necessary errand, and he intended to complete it without personal flourish. "Consequences." Then they shoved him down. Not hard enough to break bones, hard enough to humiliate. Dave's shoulder caught the edge of the wall, his palm smacked polished floor. The foyer's light spun. He heard a faint gasp somewhere, maybe a waiter, maybe an innocent diner who had glimpsed the shape of violence and decided correctly that seeing wasn't the same as intervening. When Dave looked up, the men were already moving. Down a stairwell, disappearing into the hotel's soft machinery of corridors and exits and unmarked doors. He stayed on the floor for one long breath, then two, the way you stay still after a wipeout to make sure you're not concussed. His ribs ached where the blade had kissed them through cloth. His mind, which had spent a lifetime worshipping at the altar of rational explanation, began to fracture into competing hypotheses. This is targeted intimidation. This is a prank timed to my travel. This is a message from someone else wearing Sai Baba's name like a mask. This is India, and you have been arrogant enough to assume you can walk through it without consequence. He pushed himself up, palms slick, and headed for the restaurant with one thought that was more reflex than plan. Find the man who invited me here. Find Dr. Sinha. Chapter 1. Northridge, California, the argument that started it. 3 weeks earlier, in a sun-baked room in Northridge that smelled of books and old paper and faintly of surf wax, Dave Lane had been laughing. Not the laugh he used in lectures when a student made a clever point, the controlled pedagogical chuckle, but a real laugh, sharp-edged, the kind that startled even him. It came out like a bark. "Not believable," he said. And then, because Jeff was watching him with that stubborn, boyish hope he'd never quite outgrown, Dave added, "Not even slightly." Jeff Carter leaned back in the chair opposite him, long legs sprawled as if he owned the space. Jeff's hair had thinned at the temples, but the rest of him still carried the faint swagger of the kid Dave had met in high school, the one who always believed the universe was trying to tell him something. "Kary Mullis," Jeff said, as if invoking a saint, "won a Nobel Prize in chemistry, and he says astrology has evidential support." Dave groaned. "Jeff, a Nobel Prize isn't a vaccination against nonsense." Jeff reached behind him to the shelf. Jeff always brought his arguments with props, and pulled out a small book with a glossy cover, Dancing Naked in the Minefield, Mullis's autobiography. Jeff handled it with reverence that was half sincere, half performative. "Listen," Jeff said, flipping to a marked page. He read, voice rising with the pleasure of someone who thinks he's about to land a knockout punch. He talks about how 3 people guessed his sign in a row. He even does the stats, one in 1728. Says psychologists should take astrology seriously because it gives clues into the psyche. Dave stared at him the way you stare at a friend who insists ghosts are real because their lights flickered once. "That's voodoo math," Dave said. "It's what people do when they want meaning. They grab numbers like talismans." Jeff's eyes narrowed. "You say that like you've never wanted meaning." Dave didn't answer immediately. He shifted, felt the familiar ache in his back from too many years hunched over books and keyboards, too many mornings meditating on a cushion in a closet he'd converted into what he half-jokingly called his Himalayan cave. Jeff pressed, sensing a weak point. "Didn't you tell me about that place in India? The ancient astrological library, the one where they had your name printed in a leaf?" Dave's face tightened in spite of himself. "Oh," he said, "not that?" Jeff smiled. "So it happened." "It happened," Dave conceded, "in the way that lots of things happen in India. Which is to say, it happened to me, and it was weird, and I don't know what it means. And I don't want it used as evidence for cosmic vending machines." Jeff sat forward. "You wrote about it." Dave's irritation flared. "Because it was a good story, and because I was young and broke, and someone would pay for it." "Fate magazine," Jeff said, almost gleeful, like a prosecutor revealing a scandal. Dave winced. "Yeah, FATE, which in my defense at least had an audience willing to read." Jeff raised the book again. "So, okay. You don't like Mullis' stats. Fine. But you went to India. You saw the Brig Samhita. You experienced the thing you're mocking." Dave leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. "Experiencing something isn't the same as endorsing it." Jeff opened his mouth to continue, but Dave cut him off with a sharp tilt of his head. "You want to know why smart people believe stupid things?" Dave said. "Because we're animals with pattern-hungry brains. Because the world is too big. Because randomness feels like insult. Because even geniuses get lonely, and loneliness makes people superstitious." Jeff held Dave's gaze. "So you're saying Mullis believed astrology because he was lonely?" Dave shrugged. "Or because he enjoyed the idea of shaking scientists by the lapels? Or because he wanted to be special in another way? Nobel isn't enough. You want mystique." Jeff laughed. "You sound like you're psychoanalyzing him." "I'm offering hypotheses," Dave said, "the way sane people do." Jeff waved the book. "Then explain this. Why would someone like Mullis, who knows more chemistry than we'll ever know, be mesmerized by astrology?" Dave didn't answer right away. He reached for his coffee, now cold. On his desk, his phone buzzed with a notification he ignored. Then he said, "It reminds me of a story." Jeff's eyebrows rose. "Oh, here we go." "It's about Mullis," Dave said. Jeff leaned in. "You know Mullis? No, Dave said, but a friend of mine did, a visual arts professor at UCSD Kim. Met Mullis at a party in La Jolla, one of those academic soirees. Sherry, gossip, people pretending they've read each other's books. Jeff's grin widened. Tell me. Dave's voice shifted into storyteller mode, and the room seemed to brighten as the scene took form. So Kim and Mullis get into an argument about politics at dinner. It escalates fast. Mullis gets pissed, Kim won't agree with him, and finally, this is the key, Mullis pulls the Nobel Prize card. Like literally says, I have a Nobel Prize, so I know more than you. He basically tells Kim to shut up. Jeff laughed. Of course. And the table goes quiet, Dave continued. Everyone waits to see what Kim does. Kim looks at Mullis and says, calmly, yeah, you might have a Nobel Prize, Carrie, but I've seen you surf and you suck. Jeff inhaled so sharply he choked. Dave smiled despite himself. Mullis loses it. Challenges him to a fight outside. Shoving match. No punches, but plenty of ego. Jeff wiped his eyes. That cannot be real. It's real enough, Dave said. Or at least it was real when Kim told it. And here's the thing, it's true even if the details are wrong, because it captures the human part, the part that wants to be admired in every arena, the part that can't tolerate being ordinary at anything. Jeff sat back, still laughing. So, you think Mullis believed astrology because he sucked at surfing? Dave pointed at him. Now you're doing voodoo causation. Jeff held up both hands. Fine, fine. They both laughed again, the laughter easing into a warm silence. Then Jeff said softer, You're going back to India. Dave nodded. Next week. Jeff watched him. And you're going to look for that Brigu thing again. I didn't say that. Jeff's smile was sly. You don't have to. I know you. Dave looked away toward the closet door across the room. Behind it, behind the meditation cushions, the Buddha statues, the Tibetan prints, the rugs that made his neighbor call it World Market on steroids, there was a chest, brown, old. Inside it, his diary from 1978, bound in red, inherited from his father's library like a relic. There were entries he'd read 100 times. There was one entry he almost never read, because even now it made his skin prickle with the memory of something he couldn't put into a clean box. Jeff's voice broke into his thoughts again. So why are we talking about astrology, Dave? Dave exhaled. Because you won't stop, Jeff grinned. Because I'm worried about you. Dave snorted. I'm a grown man. Jeff's grin didn't fade. Grown men still walk into mystery, they just pretend it's research. Dave's phone buzzed again, he ignored it. Jeff leaned forward, eyes serious now. When you go back, be careful. India isn't just temples and theories. There are people. And people don't like being exposed. Dave's mouth tightened. A memory flickered. His house ransacked decades ago, threats typed with fury, his name used like a curse. He forced a smile. I'll be fine. Jeff wasn't convinced. You always say that. Dave said, I'm leaving before rush hour. He didn't. Traffic on the 405 southbound was a slow, endless river of steel and exhaust. Cars packed like sardines from Westwood to LAX. Dave sat behind the wheel, watching brake lights flare and fade like a nervous system, and his mind, uninvited, returned to India, to heat, to chai, to palm leaves bundled in ropes, to a sentence that had once made his throat go dry. A young man has come from across the sea. His name is David Lane. He felt the old irritation, skepticism tightening like a fist, yet beneath it, a quieter sensation he hated admitting, curiosity, the kind that didn't behave like rational inquiry so much as longing. When he reached home in Huntington Beach, the house was empty. Andrea and the boys were at the movies. The quiet felt like permission. He walked to his meditation closet, opened the door, and the scent of incense, faint, familiar, rose like a ghost. He knelt by the brown chest, lifted the lid, and took out the red diary. The pages were yellowed now, but the ink of his younger self was dark and legible. He opened to July 22nd, 1978, and as he began to read, the world narrowed into a corridor of memory. Chapter 2. July 22nd, 1978. The city that smelled like rain. In the diary, Dave wrote the way young scholars write, eager, observant, slightly self-dramatizing, convinced that everything might matter. Last night was both magical and very odd. He described Swami Yogeshwar Ananda Saraswati's room, the gathering of meditators, the way their talk circled the sound current, the shabd, the inner music some insisted could guide the soul like a rope out of the world. He wrote about a woman named Tripta Devi, mid-30s, smile like sunrise. Natural serenity, he called it, the way young men do when they meet someone whose calm makes them feel seen. He wrote about the invitation, the Bhrigu Samhita, an ancient astrological book, well regarded, consulted only if preordained. He wrote with the casual arrogance of the skeptic in training that he wasn't interested. Then, the bus delay, mechanical difficulties, 7 hours to kill, fate or coincidence or the universe playing its favorite trick, forcing you into the very thing you said you didn't believe in. He wrote about the bicycle rickshaw ride through Hoshiarpur, the heat softened by last night's rain, the streets bustling with life, the smell of damp dust and cooking oil, the sound of horns like a language. He wrote about seeing Professor Bhagat Ram Kamal buying fruit at the roadside, joining them, excited like a child in an academic's body. Then the alley, then the library. Only it wasn't a library the way Dave's father would have meant the word. No hush of carpeted aisles, no card catalogue, no institutional order. It was a private house down a narrow passage, sandwiched between back streets, as if knowledge had been shoved into a corner to keep it safe from the world's scrutiny. Inside, bundles, huge stacks of leaves, palm or parchment tied like firewood. Dave had expected a single book. Instead, he found what looked like the dismantled spine of an entire civilization. 2 men greeted them. Librarians, astrologers, both, fluent in English. Matter of fact, their calm was unnerving. They didn't act like frauds, Dave noted. Frauds perform. These men behaved like men who had done this so often that novelty was impossible. They served chai. Dave described it perfectly, like a cross between coffee and hot chocolate, sweet, spiced, comforting. They spoke of destiny, of how no one arrives unless written into the leaves. Dave wrote with a faint sarcasm he didn't quite own yet. Therefore, my coming had been expected and arranged for thousands of years ago. He watched them draw a chart, not exactly Western astrology, but a reconstruction of lunar and solar positions. The librarians emphasized something that struck him as theatrical. The most vital event was not his birth. It was his arrival. That detail even now made adult Dave's eyebrows rise. It was such a clever pivot. You couldn't check it. You couldn't falsify it. You couldn't say, no, you've got my birth wrong, because they weren't anchoring the reading in the one data modern record-keeping could confirm. They were anchoring it in a moment that existed only as experience. Then came the search. Dave wrote about how the men rifled through bundles, untying them, scanning for the matching chart. He asked, almost playfully, if they had a classification system. The Swami replied, solemn as scripture, they don't need it. It is destiny itself which guides them. Dave remembered feeling, what? Skepticism, yes, but also a creeping sense that he was watching a ritual designed to pull him into reverence. 15 minutes, 20. Professor Kamal exclaimed he'd found it. Dave admitted in his diary that he thought it was unusually fast. The speed itself became part of the spell. The quicker the leaf appeared, the more it felt like inevitability. And then they read. Dave's younger handwriting tightened on the page as if his hand had trembled. The first line stopped him cold. A young man has come from a far-off land across the sea. His name is David Lane. He has come with a pandit and a swami. In the diary, Dave wrote that he interrupted, demanded explanation, looked at the Sanskrit, saw his name rendered in syllables that approximated his sound. The swami pointed, solemn, proud. Dave confessed to an odd sense of providence. He wrote of details touching, personal, and of a past life in Calcutta, austerities, some sin requiring rectification, a small payment suggested. He wrote, almost as an afterthought, that the librarians offered to let him keep the leaf. That offer, so generous, so suspicious, rang in adult Dave's mind like a bell. In 1978, the leaf felt like a relic. In 2025, it felt like a prop, and yet. Adult Dave closed the diary in his closet sanctuary and stared at the Buddha statue across from him, its expression indifferent to human obsession. He told himself what he'd told Jeff. Economics, not divine wizardry, but the diary did not end with the Brigu Samhita. Not really. The Brigu, for all its weirdness, was only the doorway. What haunted Dave, what he almost never reread, came after. He turned pages anyway, as if compelled. Then his phone rang. Chapter 3. The Reporter and the Resurrection of an Old Enemy. The number was unfamiliar. Dave almost didn't answer. The modern world had trained him to distrust unknown calls, robocallers, scams, fake threats, the IRS demanding gift cards. He answered, "Hi, is this Dr. David Lane?" "Yes." A crisp voice, West Coast cadence. "This is Christopher Slavins. I'm a reporter with the San Francisco Chronicle. We talked several years ago about Adida." Dave's mind clicked into its professional posture, exposés, interviews, the strange afterlife of published criticism. "What can I do for you?" Dave asked. "I'm researching Ekankar and its offshoots," Slavin said. "There's a group calling themselves the Twitchelians. They claim that Rebazar Tars and Sudar Singh, Twitchel's early teachers, are real historical people. They say your work claiming those figures were invented is mistaken." Dave pinched the bridge of his nose. He felt the old fatigue rise, the weary familiarity of myths that refused to die. "What evidence do they have?" he asked, already suspecting the answer. "They say they're in contact with an ashram in Agra," Slavins replied. "They claim there are documents about Sudha Singh." Agra. Dave's schedule surfaced. Keynote at Dialbar, a conference, consciousness, science and religion. His travel itinerary was suddenly threaded with an unexpected strand. "What's the ashram called?" Dave asked. "Shanti Sudar, outside Agra, near Shani Devi Mandir on the road toward Hathras. The head mahant is Sri Gopal Daswanji." Dave felt a flicker of interest, part research, part irritation. He'd spent decades tracing genealogies of gurus and lineages of invented masters, watching how human longing created entire hierarchies of invisible beings, each one a mirror of the believer's need. "I'll be there in a week," Dave said. "I can check it out." Slavin sounded pleased. "I'll email details. Is neuralsurfer@yahoo.com still good?" Dave grimaced. "Yes." After the call, Dave sat in the quiet of his house and felt something shift. Ekankar was an old war, a battle fought in photocopied journals and angry memos, in threats and legal intimidation, in arguments about plagiarism and invented lineages. He had been 21 when he wrote the paper that started it. 21, too young to understand the true weight of institutions, too stubborn to stop. Ekankar had threatened him, and threats had perversely sharpened him. He uncovered that Paul Twitchell, charismatic, slippery, had stitched together a religion from borrowed words, borrowed cosmologies, borrowed authority. He found the seams. He published them. He became, without quite intending to, a man who ruined other men's myths, and myths, he had learned, do not forgive. Now, a new offshoot, Twitchelians, was calling him wrong, claiming hidden documents in Agra, claiming history where Dave had argued there was invention. It would be easy to dismiss, and yet something about the timing, Agra, India, the resurfacing of old spiritual disputes, stirred the part of Dave that still lived in that 1978 diary, still breathed the smell of chai and rain and old paper. Then the message came, the one that truly tilted the world. A Facebook friend request from a man in Yolanda, a message. "Professor Lane, I am Swami Yogeshwar Ananda Saraswati's nephew. I inherited many of my uncle's papers. I have a very old piece of paper with Sanskrit writing on it. Perhaps it is the same leaf." Dave stared at the screen until the words blurred. The leaf was gone, lost after Swami's death. That was the story he'd told for years, clean, sad, final. And now, 40 years later, it might exist. If the leaf existed, Dave could test it. If he could test it, he could prove it was modern. If he proved it was modern, the Brigu Samhita could be filed forever under the label he preferred, fraud. But if the leaf existed and the tests went the other way, Dave didn't allow himself to complete that sentence, and he wrote back. They arranged to meet in Amritsar. He booked his flight. And somewhere deep in his mind, a door that had been closed for decades creaked open. Chapter 4. India. Again. The hotel that smelled like jasmine. Delhi greeted him the way it always did, like a hand on the chest. Heat, sound, motion, the airport's fluorescent fatigue giving way to the city's sprawl. The Dialbag Educational Institute had arranged a driver. Dave liked that, one less variable. He checked into the Leela Palace, indulgent and serene, jasmine scent curling through the lobby like a promise that not everything in India was chaos. He wanted the rooftop pool. He wanted water. He wanted to float and let jet lag dissolve. Instead, the concierge called, "Sir, a Dr. Arjun Sinha is in the lobby. He wishes to meet you." Dave frowned. The name meant nothing. He went down anyway because courtesy is sometimes just another form of survival. Dr. Sinha stood tall, clean-shaven, Western suit sharp enough to cut. He shook Dave's hand with practiced warmth. "Dr. Lane," he said, "so happy to meet you. Professor Kamal asked me to welcome you. He invites you to dinner at the Hyatt Regency tomorrow. Colleagues wish to discuss your work. Rataswamy, the Punjab Deras, political turmoil." Dave blinked. Kamal had always been courteous, but this seemed sudden. Still, data was data, and Dave was, at heart, a collector of narratives. He agreed. They set 7 o'clock. Dr. Sinha departed quickly, as if the meeting itself was the point, not the conversation. Dave watched him go and felt a faint unease, one of those animal instincts he didn't like because it wasn't rational, because it didn't come with footnotes. But he told himself he was tired. He told himself India always felt like this at first. The next evening, he went to the Hyatt, and then in the dark foyer outside the restaurant, men grabbed him, a blade pressed into his ribs, a warning, take down the Sai Baba article at 24 hours, or else. When Dave later asked the restaurant host about Dr. Sinha's reservation, she looked at him with polite confusion. "No reservation under that name, sir." Dr. Sinha had vanished like a character written out of a scene. The police came. Security reviewed footage. Dave returned to the Leela with adrenaline still buzzing in his blood, trying to decide whether to call Andrea and panic her or keep quiet and handle it. In his room, he opened his phone and pulled up his old essay about Sathya Sai Baba, the piece he'd written years ago as a critical examination of claims of miracles and the darker rumors that followed the guru's orbit. He didn't like revisiting it. It was a swamp. Devotion, deception, accusation, money, power. He'd posted it because he believed academic freedom mattered, because he believed stubbornly that sunlight was a disinfectant. But now someone wanted it gone, and someone had put a blade to his ribs to make the request. Dave sat on the edge of the bed, phone glowing in the dark, and felt the old problem surface again. When you publish criticism of spiritual leaders, you aren't just arguing with ideas. You are threatening identities, and identities defend themselves. Chapter 5. Amritsar, the city of gold and warning texts. When Dave landed in Amritsar, he felt a loosening in his chest. He loved this city. He loved the Golden Temple. He loved the way devotion here felt less like fear and more like nourishment. The Tej Swarna Hotel was a luxury he wouldn't have imagined in 1978. When he'd stayed in a youth hostel that doubled as a corridor for Afghanistan's opium and hash. India had changed. Or rather, India had added layers. The old remained, and the new rose on top of it like fresh paint on ancient stone. In the lobby at 10 a.m., Jasbir Singh approached him with an affectionate seriousness that made Dave feel, instantly, the weight of the past. "Dr. Lane," Jasbir said, palms together briefly in greeting. "It is a pleasure. I am my uncle's nephew. I have read your work. I watched your film about Brigu, and I believe the leaf exists." Jasbir was smaller than Dave expected, mid-50s, cream turban, beard grey and dignified. His shirt was improbably tropical, Tommy Bahama in Punjab, and the contrast amused Dave despite the tension humming under everything. They found a quiet conference room. Jasbir didn't bring the leaf itself. He feared damaging it, but he produced glossy photographs, clear enough to make Dave's pulse quicken. Dave leaned over the images like a man studying a crime scene. The script was Devanagari-like, the ink faint but present, the chart markings oddly precise. Jasbir read slowly, "A young man from across the sea named David Christopher Xavier Lane." Dave's head snapped up. "Xavier?" Jasbir pointed. "A sound approximation, it is there." Dave swallowed. He didn't like this. He didn't like the way his full name sat on the page like an impossible fingerprint. Jasbir continued, and when he reached the final line, his voice shifted, uncertain, almost wary. "There is more," he said, "but part is missing, torn away. What remains is strange." He adjusted his glasses and read the fragment. "Each leaf on a tree makes a unique sound, but put all the leaves together and it produces harmony. One leaf is necessary but not sufficient." Dave stared at the words. It sounded like a riddle, or a metaphor, or a warning. It also sounded unpleasantly like something that belonged in a book about networks, about systems whose meaning emerged only when many small pieces linked. A hypertextual mind, Dave's mind. At lunch, over aloo gobi and paneer and sweet gulab jamun, Dave tried to treat it like research. He asked practical questions. When could he see the original? Could he take it for testing? Jasbir agreed. "Come to Jalandhar tomorrow." That night, Dave went to the Golden Temple with his driver friend, Happy. The promenade outside the complex glowed with shops and pilgrims and laughter. The temple itself shone like something dreamed into being, gold against dark sky, reflected in water that seemed to hold the world's yearning. Dave felt, for a few hours, safe. Then his phone buzzed. A WhatsApp message. "We warned you, Dr. Lane. You didn't do as we requested. Now you must face the consequences. The Watchers who are everywhere." Dave's stomach tightened. That phrase, "the Watchers who are everywhere," was not new. It was old. It was a ghost from another battle, a battle fought decades earlier, when another spiritual organization had responded to criticism with threats and intimidation. Dave walked the temple's marble pathways, shoes off, head covered, surrounded by devotion, and felt the uncanny sensation of being watched even here, even in the one place he believed no one would dare bring violence. He didn't tell Happy, but as they drove back, Dave's mind had already begun searching old archives, old threats, old documents, trying to find where he'd seen that phrase before. He found it in the Internet Archive that same night, a nasty letter titled "Scumbags." And at the bottom, CC, the Watchers who are everywhere. Dave stared at the screen until it felt like the letters might crawl off it. The past, it seemed, had not stayed buried. Chapter 6. Jalandhar, the leaf in the leather pouch. The next afternoon, Dave rode with Happy through Punjab's heat, through roads that carried memories he hadn't asked for. He watched fields, shops, half-built buildings, modern apartments rising like imported dreams. At Jasbir's home, Jasbir's wife Geeta offered samosas and warmth as if hospitality itself could keep danger at bay. Then Jasbir led Dave into his office and produced a leather pouch. First, a photograph. Dave at 22, sitting beside Baba Fakir Chand, the old sage's eyes bright with a kind of ruthless honesty Dave had rarely encountered in spiritual circles. The photo struck Dave like a punch of nostalgia. Fakir Chand had been the one guru who insisted visions were projections, that saints did not appear from outside, that the mind was the true miracle and the true trap. Then Jasbir opened the pouch again, and the air in the room seemed to change. The leaf. It was smaller than Dave remembered, fragile, frayed edges curled, about 8 by 10 inches. The ink was faded but present, like a voice trying to speak across centuries. Dave's hands were careful as he slid it into a protective casing. He took photographs, front, back, close-ups of script. He spoke like a scientist because it was the only language he trusted when he felt awe trying to enter. "We need tests," he said. Paper age, ink age, composition, provenance, language. Otherwise, we're just storytelling. Jasbir nodded. Which lab can do it? Dave thought of Delhi, of the university, of forensic science and chemistry. He told Jasbir his plan, drop it off in Delhi for analysis. Then Dave stepped outside for privacy and called his credit union. Fraudulent transactions in Houston, Texas. His account frozen, his card cancelled. Before he could process that, Andrea texted him in panic. Dave, you've been hacked. Emails from your Yahoo account are sending bizarre religious manifestos. Your website has a giant logo. The Watchers who are everywhere. What's going on? Call me. Dave's blood ran cold. This wasn't just intimidation now. This was war, digital and intimate. Someone had entered his life through the back door of his identity. He called Andrea. He tried to calm her. He promised he was safe. He wasn't sure he believed it. When he left Jasbir's home, Happy drove him back toward Amritsar. Halfway there, a loud pop split the air. The car swerved, spun, dust. They stopped in a ravine, heartbeats loud in their ears. 2 front tires flattened, punctured as if by a strip of nails. Dave's mind flashed to old movies, to ambush scenes he'd never taken seriously. Then a silver sedan screamed up behind them, braking hard. 3 men stepped out, Punjabi outfits, no turbans, faces blank as masks. One spoke. Having car troubles. Happy's voice shook despite his attempt at humor. You could say that. We are here to help, the man said. And then guns appeared, pointed at their bodies with casual certainty. Dave felt the strange calm of adrenaline, the same calm he'd felt before diving under a massive wave at Black's Beach, knowing panic would drown you faster than water. What do you want? Dave demanded. Money? Phones? The car? No, the man said. We want one thing. You were warned. Take down the Sai Baba article. Dave's anger flared. I emailed the webmaster. He'll take it down as soon as he sees it. The men glanced at each other as if confirming something. Then they holstered the guns, got back into the sedan and drove away, fast, silent, leaving only dust and the echo of threat. Dave and Happy stood shaking, then hugged like survivors of a shipwreck. Back at the Taj Swana, Dave filed a police report. He contacted Delhi police. He contacted the webmaster again. Finally, a message came. Got your urgent note. Essay is down. Dave felt his body loosen with relief he hadn't known it was holding. That night, he flew back to Delhi. But even as the plane rose, one thought gnawed at him like an animal in the dark. If they could hack him, if they could spam him, if they could freeze his finances, why couldn't they remove the article themselves? Why did they need him to do it? Why did they need compliance? What were they really trying to measure? Chapter 7. The University of Delhi. Science touches the myth. Dr. Prem Sharma met Dave in an office that smelled faintly of chemicals and paper and dust, the honest scent of work. Sharma was cordial, skeptical, curious. He handled the leaf with the kind of reverence only a scientist can offer, not worship, but careful attention. They discussed methods, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, testing compounds, comparing degradation patterns. Sharma spoke of ink dating and paper composition. Dave listened, grateful for the return of a world where claims could be measured. This will be interesting, Sharma said, eyes on the leaf. It looks old. Dave almost smiled. It looks old, he agreed. But looking old is easy. Sharma nodded. Yes, that is why we test. Dave left the leaf with Sharma and drove onward, back to the Leela, to a pool swim, to a night of uneasy sleep. Then to Agra, where his keynote awaited, and where the Twichellian's contact, Raj Khanna, had invited him to Swami Bagh. Agra's traffic swallowed time. The city's colors, saris, banners, rusted metal, temple paint, blurred into a living collage. At Swami Bagh, Raj greeted Dave at the gate with warmth that felt almost too eager. They walked to the ornate samad, marble carved with devotion's obsession, a tomb that had taken generations to complete. Dave bowed to Shiv Dayal Singh's sandals in the inner sanctum, performing the gesture with careful mimicry, respecting the sincerity of those who believed the dead could bless the living. As he rose, he felt briefly a strange current through his body. a flicker of sensation easily dismissed as imagination. His phone rang. He had forgotten to silence it. Embarrassed, he excused himself and stepped into the garden. It was Dr. Sharma. Sharma's voice sounded different, low, careful, weighted. "Dr. Lane," Sharma said, "I'm sorry to call at night, but I wanted to reach you immediately." Dave's mouth went dry. "Tell me." "We have finished preliminary testing," Sharma said. "We used several methods: chromatography, mass spectrometry, resistance examinations, careful sampling from a corner without writing." Dave waited, almost smiling, prepared for vindication, prepared to be right. Sharma continued, and as he spoke, the world seemed to tilt. "Our findings," Sharma said, "indicate the leaf dates to the mid-15th century." Dave blinked, certain he'd misheard. "The paper and ink," Sharma went on, "appear consistent with that period, compressed together around the same time. The paper resembles material historically produced in Kashmir, similar to what was manufactured under Sultan Zainul Abidin." Dave's hand tightened around the phone until his knuckles hurt. "No," he said. "That can't be right." Sharma exhaled. "We were shocked as well. We are not sure what to make of it." Dave stared up at the Samad's dome, lit bright against the Indian night, marble gleaming like bone. He felt numb, as if a part of his mind had shut off to prevent overload. If the leaf was 15th century, if his name was on it, if the ink and paper were truly that old, then either science had failed in a spectacular way or reality was stranger than his skepticism could bear. He heard his own voice, distant, saying the exact words he had once yelled at Jeff in Northridge. "This is not believable," Dave whispered, "not even slightly." And in the garden, the night air seemed suddenly full of invisible pages turning. End of Folio 1. This has been a Neural Surfer presentation.